Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be covering product files, which was requested by Neo on a previous video that I made. So thank you so much for the request. So let's jump into it. So what is a product file? It's basically a compilation of the different products that we use for enteral feeding and parenteral feeding, as well as like SIP feeds, for example. It's done on an Excel spreadsheet, so you list all of the products there in the different categories. It makes your life easier when it comes to selecting products to use for various disease conditions, or just in general, it helps you choose a product that would be suitable for your patient. And then the second point we'll be covering is basically the classification and how to compile one. Okay, looking at the categories of enteral feeds, we have polymeric, semi-elemental, and elemental. Polymeric is whole feeds. Basically, everything is still intact. So protein, carbs, and fats, yes, it is in a liquid form, but they're all intact, meaning that they need proper digestion or proper digestive functioning to be able to be broken down and absorbed, right? With a semi-elemental, it's a bit more easily absorbable compared to your polymeric feeds because the protein has been broken down or hydrolyzed to shorter peptide chains, basically. That's why it's sometimes called peptide-based feeds. It's partially digested, and then you have elemental or amino acid based feeds. These ones are not that common. Yes, you do get a few baby formulas that are elemental feeds, but with adult feeds, it's not quite common. So if you look at and elemental feeds is amino acid based. So the protein is completely broken down, but the carbs or the fats may not necessarily be fully broken down. Okay, then if you look at the polymeric category, you have the standard feeds, which is 1 kcal per mole. So any standard feeds, you're going to put it under this. We have standard with fiber, so again 1 kcal per mole, and if the feed has fiber inside, you add it to this category. For example, they might say inulin or something like that. They'll give you the fiber type. Then we have high energy and protein. I would say and or protein, because sometimes high energy feeds may not necessarily be high in protein as well. So you can just look out for that as well. But we do classify or put all feeds that are 1.5 kcal per mole or more under this category of high energy. So 2 kcal per mole, 3 kcal per mole, all fall under this category. Then we have high energy in protein with fiber. Again, those feeds that are high in energy and that has fiber, for example, inulin, goes under this category. And then we have disease-specific feeds. So we like to put it under a different category because it makes it easier for us when choosing feeds. For example, we have a diabetic person, or we have a patient with colon cancer or something like that. So all of your disease-specific feeds, renal, oncology, Crohn's disease, things like that, you can put it under this category. So again, with disease conditions or disease-specific conditions, the feeds might be high in energy, it might be high in protein, things like that. But yeah, we do put it under disease-specific. Then if you look at the semi-elemental categories, again, we have standard, and then we have high energy and protein. Yeah, so I'm going to be showing you how to compile your own product file using an Excel spreadsheet. And we're going to be going to the Excel spreadsheet. it's just easier showing you the different columns and where to put what information, etc., as well as giving you an example of each feed. Okay, so this is basically my product file with, we have adult tube feeds. That's the first sheet. The second one, we have adult sip feeds. I have another tab for probiotics. For example, if you have Combi Forte or anything like that, you can add that on a separate tab. It just makes it easier because it's not a specific feed. And then we have modular products, which we're going to be speaking about in a bit, right? But let's start with the tube feeds. You have your heading. We have the analysis per 100 ml because it's easier to work out and to calculate your feeds per 100 ml. I mean, when you're doing your calculations as well as with your feed selection, right? So all you have to do is make sure that you look at the nutritional information tables per 100 moles, not per serving. And I mean, most of them, almost all of them, come per 100 moles, right? So the first column we have is the feed. Then we have whether it's a ready to hang or a powder. So ready to hang, it's already in a liquid form. It's ready, basically, it's ready to um, use to feed a patient, right? Then we have the powder form because powders can also be used for enteral feeding. You obviously need to mix it and then put it in a bag or in a cup, and then the nurses would feed the patient with that. And then we have the serving size, whether it's in a 1 liter bag or a 500 ml bag. And then the RT9, so whether it's on tender or not, your product representative or sales representative from the companies will give you this information, or you'll get this from your hospital that you're at. Then we have our macros. So protein, carbs, fats, they're all in grams as well as percentage and the source. So grams per 100 ml analysis, okay, and how much, or yeah, how much of protein contributes towards your energy. So in this case, we have with Nutricia, the Nutricin 1 kcal, right? Um, it's 4 grams per 100 ml, and it contributes 16% of total energy. So that's your protein. Okay. The source of protein is, it's whey dominant. Some maybe casein or whatever, but you look at the type of protein that is used in the feed. It's going to be in the ingredient section, and you add it to the source. The same goes for carbs. In this case, it was rice flour and maltodextrin. Same goes for fat. There's fish oils, MCTs. Fish oils is always like important or good point to have on your product file, so you know which feeds have omega-3s in them, which don't, etc. And then your energy is in kcal as well as kilojoules. So remember, with our standard feeds, it's 1 kcal per ml. So therefore, it's going to be 100 kcal per 100 ml analysis. And then you get your kilojoules from there and all of your electrolytes, right? So specifically sodium, potassium chloride, and phosphate or phosphorus. Um, it's listed as milligrams, so just make sure of that. And then you're going to have a column for fiber, so the amount of fiber that's in here. Because it's standard feeds, there's no fiber. And then you have osmolality and osmolarity of feeds, and then we have additional information. So this is quite, like, I would say it's nice to have additional. So the cost per bag of the feed, for example, from what ages can you use it from? Okay, so they say that you should be careful of use for kids that are 1 to 6 years old. So obviously, based on your clinical reasoning, you pick your feed, right? For example, say there's no other feed that you can use, and this baby is now 3 years old, something like that. You use it very cautiously, monitoring all of your indicators, etc. Then, yeah, use it at your own discretion, basically. Okay. Then we have under this category as well, the standard feeds, we have Fresben Original, which is from Fresenius Kabi. So I've listed in the feed column, I've listed the company's name and the name of the feed, the full name of the feed, and also anything interesting or specific. For example, in this one, I put fiber, lactose, and gluten free. If your feed has these properties, you add them in. Most feeds are halal, and I think I think kosher. I'm not sure about the kosher, but you can check that up as well. You can also add that to your description of the feed. Okay, and then so that's all of the standard feeds. Standard feeds is mainly used for patients that just need to be fed enterally. They unable to feed orally through the mouth because of, for example, they're unable to chew and swallow because they have a low GCS, right? So they have an NGT in, and you just need to feed them via NGT. Mainly, that's where we would use standard feed. Okay. Then we have standard feeds with fiber. So again, anything below 1.5 kcal is a standard feed. For example, we have Fresben 1200 complete. Now this is a 1.2 kcal per ml feed. Yes, it is slightly higher than the 1 kcal, but it's not classified as high in energy. Okay, so we don't put it under high protein or energy feeds. It's still standard, but it has fiber inside. So you add in all of the information that you found on your bag, and under fiber, you're going to add in the amount of fiber that you have in grams per 100 ml of feed, as well as the type of fiber. So in this case, it had inulin, wheat dextrin fiber, as well as cellulose, and then you fill in the rest of the information. So it's quite simple, literally opening up the company brochures, etc., if you have it on PDF, and going to your Excel sheet and just adding in all of the information, right? So with this feed, for example, it has a nice distribution. If you look at it in terms of protein, it contributes 20% of protein contributes towards your energy, 47% of carbs towards energy, and then 30% of fat. It also has fish oils, which is good, which we know that has anti-inflammatory properties, right? So yeah, that's basically how you add in your feeds and compile a product file. But now if you look at your high protein or energy feeds, we have, for example, Nutricia, Nutrison Energy, right? This is a 1.5 kcal per mol feed, 150 kcal per 100 mol. If you look at the kcal amount there. So yeah, again, add in all of the information. The same goes, I've separated the high energy protein feeds into different categories. So 1.5 kcal per mol, 2 kcal per mol. If you have a 3 kcal per mol feed, whatever, you add in a new row basically. Okay, just to separate it. And then we have high energy and high protein energy feeds with fiber. You do the same thing. For example, this one was a multi-fiber one, so you list all of the different sources of fiber there, and yeah, you go about doing that. Because again, it was high protein or energy with fiber, I've separated it into 1.5 kcal per mol, 2 kcal per mol, etc. With disease-specific feeds, I've given the example of the Nestle Modulin IBD because it's for Crohn's disease or irritable bowel disease, right? So yeah, you add in all the information. This one is a powder, so you can add in the amount, the serving amount, as well as the tin size. So this was a 400-gram tin. If you look at the additional information, so I'm going to just widen that up a little bit. Okay, so I've given the ages that it's suitable for, the price, etc., and the price per serving. Okay, also how many servings are there per tin. Okay, so we know how to calculate. Say if you are issuing out a TTO for patient, you know how much to calculate, etc., right? And then I've also indicated the mixing instructions for one serving as well as for 1 liter of feed. So one serving for obvious reasons, right? If you're going to give it as a TTO or something, or if you simply just your patient is able to eat orally and swallow, then you can obviously just mix a serving. But say you have an NGT in place, there's no other feed for this patient, and you have this feed, right? And your patient has Crohn's disease, for example. So that's why it's always useful to know the amount to mix per liter. So it's easier in terms of admin, basically, right? So it's always good to give the mixing instructions per serving as well as per liter. You might need to calculate that yourself in terms of the liter, because not all products give you mixing instructions per liter, but it's basically comes down to just doing some maths and yeah, getting your mixing instructions per liter. Okay, then we have the disease specific feeds. So yeah, we've covered Margilan IBD. You have feeds for diabetes. With my diabetes, because I had a good few feeds, so standard feeds and feeds that are high in energy. Generally, most or almost all diabetic feeds have fiber in them for obvious reasons, right? Um, yeah, you can put the standard with fiber as a subcategory to your diabetes, and high energy or protein with fiber. Okay, and then list everything down. With cancer, I've indicated my feeds there again. For example, Supporten is a well-known feed. It's really high in energy, really high in protein, for example. It's 27% of protein contributes towards energy. So that's pretty high, right? For example, 10 grams of protein per 100 ml of feed is quite high if you compare it to a 4 gram of protein per 100 moles, right? So that's quite high. So that's used in generally cancer patients, you know, patients that are maybe in ICU, patients that are at risk for malnutrition, etc. You can use it. Again, the selection of your product depends on the clinical representation or picture of your patient that you have in front of you. It's going to be based on the anthropometry, the biochemistry, the clinical features, and the diet history of the patient as well. Okay, and obviously if they've undergone surgery or they're ventilated, all of those things should be considered as well, right? And that's how you choose a feed. So it's based on your clinical judgment of the patient. Okay, we have hepatic feeds as well that contain branched chain amino acids in them, to ensure the patients get adequate protein, right? Or easily absorbable protein sources, etc. We have ones for renal as well. We have, so that's all, and ones for surgery as well. That's all of the polymerik feeds that I've covered. Now we have the semi-elemental feeds. So it should say on your feed whether it's semi-elemental or elemental, for example, right? Or even like hydrolyzed whey protein or hydrolysate. In this case, we have a hydrolysate. It should state on the product, or you could ask your product representative for that information. Okay, semi-elemental feeds generally don't contain fiber. From my experience, they generally don't contain fiber. Okay, then we have pharmaconutrition. So with these products, it's not a complete feed. It has specific substances inside to enhance the immune system or enhance healing, or it has gut-friendly properties, etc. So for example, glutamine is used in burns, trauma conditions, etc. So this is basically, yeah, it contains this as well as maltodextrin, etc., etc. So it's not a complete feed, it's only used in specific conditions, right? So that's why we put it under pharmaconutrition. Okay, so now we're on the sip feeds. It's very, very similar to the tube feeds, okay? It's the same types of rows, columns, etc., except the analysis is per unit. So per 200 ml bottle, per 250 ml bottle, per 125 ml bottle. So that's why here the serving size, it's very important to add it in correctly, obviously, and then indicate your grams of protein, carbs, fats, energy, etc., or the serving size, the actual serving size, okay? And then again, adding in any additional information, etc., etc. The categories are exactly the same: standard feeds with fiber, high protein, energy, all of those things. With these feeds, because they are flavored, because it's sip feeds, you can add in the various flavors. So for example, high protein or energy feeds, we have Resbun energy drink, which is available in vanilla and strawberry, for example. So it just makes it easier. For example, if you know your patient doesn't really like chocolate flavored things, you can recommend a vanilla strawberry, things like that. But everything here is basically the same as the tube feeds. I've also indicated a category for porridge, for example, or if you have something like a custard or whatever it is, you can add like a different category for that. Like for example, solids, because most of these are sip feeds, so they're milkshakes, right? Yeah. And then we have hydrolyzed feeds or the semi-elemental ones, Peptamen Prebio, things like that. With the sub feeds, so you need to indicate whether they are either ready to drink. Yeah, I put ready to hang, but it's actually ready to drink, um, or in a powder form. With the powder form, because you can mix it both with the 1 kcal per mole serving, for example, or 1.5 kcal per mole serving, then you indicate both mixtures on in different rows, right? So for example, if you had the Ibulin in this case, right? Modulan IBD for Crohn's disease, I've indicated that um, per serving, obviously, as a standard feed, the 1.5 or the 1 kcal per mole, and as well as the 1.5 kcal per mole. So I know exactly, okay, if I need to use Modulan IBD, but my patient is not eating that well, so I want to try and use a more energy dense approach or more energy dense feed. So I'm going to choose to mix it using the 1.5 kcal per mole so that I get more energy, more protein, for example, per 100 moles. Per 100 moles. Okay, so again, you indicate both um, mixing instructions. So for the 1 kcal as well as the 1.5 kcal, right? So yeah, that's basically what you do for the powders. Okay, it's important to indicate that it will make your life easier, especially when prescribing for a patient, and you know exactly what to do. Okay, so now we have the modular products. So modular basically refers to those products that don't have one or more of the macronutrients in them. Okay, they are specifically focused on a specific macronutrient, if that makes sense, or macronutrients, right? So we have you're going to add in all of your clear fluids in here, all of your protein products in here, your micronutrient mixes in here as well. So with the clear fluids, we have FortiJuice, Resvent Juicy, like commonly used products for example, patients that are going for surgery. So we can use this a few hours prior to the surgery, things like that, just so that we limit the fasting times according to the ERAS protocol principles. Okay, so things like that. We can see that it doesn't contain any fat. Okay, that's why it's a clear fluid, right? Also, you could use clear fluids in patients that have maybe nausea, things like that in hospital as well, that could assist them in getting some nutrients, especially protein. it does contain yeah, protein, which is really good if you compare it to a normal fruit juice, which doesn't contain much protein, right? So this is obviously a really good choice. And then we have, I've also indicated, so yeah, the categories is very much, I want to say, almost flexible and up to you. So clear fluids, your energy shots, those shots are really, really energy dense. So a really high amount of energy in a very little amount of liquid, basically. Okay, they make it in, yeah, so that the patient just, ingests it at one time, etc. And then you have your protein products, so your whey proteins, there's various protein products, obviously. So you can indicate all of that. If it's a powder, like in this case, it's a powder, I've indicated the mixing instructions per serving or whatever it is. And then products for dysphagia as well. Fresenius Kabi is thick and easy for food thickening, all of that. And then immunonutrition or micros. So here is all of your micronutrient powders that you get. For example, this one is vitamin. I've listed, it's going to make this may seem tedious at this point to list all of the vitamins and the amounts per 100 ml or per serving, whatever. It's going to take you long, but it's going to be worth it because you can refer to it and go, okay, it's actually meeting the, for example, it may meet the 80% of the RDA for my patient, or may meet 100% of the RDA for, I don't know, for example, vitamin E or something random, right? So, but it's going to help you decide what to give your patient. For example, if you really want them to get in enough vitamin C with B12, etc., this is really good. Okay. It also has the how much, or yeah, how many sachets to use, etc. So, as well as the mixing instructions. So you can indicate all of that information. It's going to make your life easy in terms of choosing a product. I haven't indicated all the products under all the categories. I've just given a few examples here and there. But obviously, when you compiling your product file, you're going to indicate all of the products. There's also products, for example, your glutamine products. So that could maybe fall under your protein product category. There are obviously many different types of products that you can add in the different categories. I hope that this helps. And if you have any other questions, please leave them down in the comments. And if you have any other video suggestions, yeah, please leave them in the comments. And thank you very much for the suggestion. I hope this helps.